Hello there and welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me. I've got another book review and book recommendation for you today, and this one is called In the Psychiatrist Chair. Now, it's not strictly a book as such, but it is listed on Goodreads and I did get it on Audible. But it's actually, let me just check the focus here. It's actually a set of recordings from BBC Radio 4, a programme that they did years ago. So they had a psychiatrist called Dr. Anthony Clare interviewing celebrities and well-known people. And so it's a bit similar to Desert Island Discs, except obviously they don't do the music. And he does quite an in-depth interview with them and asks them about their childhood and tries to get into their psyche. So I really enjoyed it, and I just wanted to chat a little bit about it today, because it's nice to digest these books before kind of rushing on to the next one, you know. So I actually realised when I was listening to this, I actually realised that this was recorded in 1990. Was it 1990 or 1991? Yeah, 1990, so a long time ago. Which is funny that it came up on my recommendations, but I really enjoyed listening to it. First of all, he had Spike Milligan on, and Spike Milligan was being really open and honest and talking about his mental breakdowns. And he was saying things like, you know, in some ways it's a gift and in some ways it's a curse, because he said you get the pain much worse, but you also see the sunrise much more beautiful. So he was talking about those extremes of emotions, and also he talked about the sadness that he had experienced and how he used it for his creativity, and talking about, you know, which I suppose was quite ahead of its time for 1990, but sort of saying about, you know, when people say, oh, snap out of it, you know, you can't just snap out of it. It's a bit like telling somebody with a broken leg just to start walking again, you know. So I really enjoyed him going into all that aspect of mental illness. Then he had on the director, Peter Nicholls, and Peter Nicholls was talking about his daughter, Abigail, who was brain damaged and died at the age of 10. He talked about his own childhood, how he was bedwetting until he was 16 years old, and that how he had a real fear of his dad, and that he didn't actually start writing plays or having plays put on until after his dad died, because he knew that his dad wouldn't like them, and that he would storm out of the theatre. And he said that now if he sees someone storming out, he says to himself, oh, there goes the dad, you know. So he was talking a lot about his childhood. Then he was talking about you know, when he sits down to when he sets about to direct a play, and then he thinks to himself, I'm not going to direct this unless it's so spectacular a play that I'm going to make people come out in the pouring rain to pay a ticket to see what I have directed. So kind of talking about his motivation for directing, which I found really interesting. Then Dr. Anthony Clare had Maya Angelou on, and she was just a joy to listen to. She's got this amazing, lovely voice, and sometimes she just broke into song, and she's got the most incredible singing voice. I mean, it was absolutely beautiful. He talked about how she was the best-selling black female writer, and how at the age of 8 she was raped, and for 5 years after the rape she was completely mute. She wouldn't speak to anyone apart from her brother, because she believed that because she told her brother and her mother about the rape, and then the mother told everybody, and then the guy was caught and imprisoned, and apparently the next day the guy killed himself, she believed that it was her fault that he killed himself, that it was her voice, that because she spoke up, that was why he was killed. So she didn't speak for 5 years. She says that, well, at the time of this recording, that you know, she was living on her own. She was a bit of a hermit and a recluse, and that she found that the easiest way of living because she felt safe, So it was really interesting to hear about what was going on in her head as well. Then he interviewed Ken Russell, and Ken Russell talked about the breakup of his marriage and how that he never really got over it, and how that a lot of the breakup of his marriage went into his work, translated into his work, whatever he did. Then he said that he would be happy never to be seen or heard again. He only does interviews for the sake of promoting his work. So he was quite reclusive as well. He talked about his nervous breakdown. So, I mean, this guy, Dr. Clare, has got the ability to really kind of get in there and get them to talk very honestly. He had Edwina Currie on. She was talking about her father who disowned her. The minute that she said that she was going to marry a black man, her father disowned her and didn't speak to her for 4 years. Didn't see his grandchild. But I found the interview with her quite interesting because Dr. Clare got very impatient with her, quite touchy with her, because he felt that she was avoiding a lot of the questions and kind of not being as honest as she could be. He was trying to pry at the affair that she had with John Major, and she just wasn't going there, and so that was quite interesting. He found it hard to get any kind of real honesty out of her. Then he had the theatre director Peter Hall on talking, who has just got the most dream voice. He was so seductive, but he was very honest about having, although he was the director of the RSC, he said he didn't have much money. Now, I don't know if he meant much money as in he wasn't a millionaire. I'm sure he had enough money to keep him going, but he talked about not having much money. And talked about, sort of Dr. Hall was praying, saying things like, do you drink a lot? No. Do you eat a lot? Yes. Do you like a lot of sex? Yes. He was just had this real seductive voice. It was very interesting to listen to. Then, the creme of the creme was Barbara Cartland, and she was just a law unto herself. She talked at 100 miles an hour. He had real difficulty in getting a word in edgeways. He asked her, she said something like, she'd been proposed to 6 times by the time she was 16, but that she only found out about what sex was about when she was 18. Or I think she didn't say what age it was, and he said, what age were you? And she just rattled on, and 4 times he asked her, what age would you have been? And she finally told him the age, and so she just talks at, a million miles an hour. She was saying about how she didn't like women. She didn't like women, that all her unhappiness came from women, that she loved men, she admired men, she made men her heroes in the books. And Dr. Clare was saying to her, well, what about violent men? And she was like, no, they pick on men are wonderful, the women's live has messed everything up, it's the women that are behaving badly. The women shouldn't have went out to work, they should have stayed at home and looked after the kids, and a man must be a man, and he must have his own way. And Dr. Clare was like, you're going to alienate a lot of your female readers here saying this. And she was like, but it's true. And there should be no sex before marriage. And she was a bit full on. But in saying that, you kind of have to look at the fact, well, she was born in 1901. So that was, her sort of generation. But she talked about how it took her 7 days to write a book, and she wrote 23 books in a year, which is pretty impressive. But then she was saying, like, he was sort of saying to her, have you ever had dark times? And she said, yes, I have had dark times, but you have to pull yourself up and get on, and you can't show weakness. It's a weakness. You have to be strong and proud. And so Dr. Clare was saying to her, so if you see that people are depressed or suicidal, you see that as a weakness. Yes, it's a weakness, So I mean, she'd really, really outdated views, you know, on mental illness, on feminism, on, you know, she said, women are not very intelligent and they're spiteful and they'll steal your man and you have to stay away from them. So I can't imagine that that interview would have went down very well for her sales. But anyway, and then the last interview was with Jane Rook, a journalist who had this real smoky voice, and that was an interesting interview because they really bounced off each other, and he was quite argumentative with her, but it was quite an amiable chat all the same. But she was saying things like, "Oh, I'm hating this, you're asking me too many questions," and he was saying, "Oh, well, that's called a seductive defense," you know, and he wasn't sort of taking any nonsense from her. So yeah, I really enjoyed listening to that one. Not strictly a book, but a very enjoyable Radio 4 program from ages ago, but still very enjoyable. So that's it from me. Over and out.